Okay. And like I just mentioned, we're here for the class First Steps for New Caregivers, and we're here today with the Caregiver Resource Center, Orange County. My name is Rachel Smythe. I'm a social worker here and a family consultant, and I'm joined by my colleague, Peter Wynn, who's a licensed clinical social worker and a family consultant with us as well. Before we get into the material, the First Steps for New Caregivers, we wanted to talk a little bit about the history of our agency. We have been serving Orange County from now until 1988. So it's been over 30 years that we've been providing services. And we're part of the community services programs of Providence St. Jude Medical Center. We're part of the California Caregiver Resource System. There's 11 caregiver resource centers throughout the state. And we're funded through the Federal Older Americans Act and Family Caregiver Support Program. Our mission here at the Caregiver Resource Center is to increase the quality of life of caregivers by helping families and communities master the challenges of caregiving. The eligibility for our program here in Orange County is that you and the person that you're caring for both need to reside within the limits of Orange County. And we classify a caregiver as an adult who's caring for another adult who might have a cognitive or brain impairment that has an adult onset, or somebody who's over the age of 60 and needs assistance with their activities of daily living, or ADLs, which we'll talk more about later. And our primary programs here at the Caregiver Resource Center are facilitating support groups. We do caregiver assessment and care planning. We provide education and training, including legal workshops. We do individual counseling. We provide specialized information for caregivers, and we also offer respite assistance. And just a little bit of information, some caregiver statistics. And these are from 2015, so I'm sure the numbers have only increased since then. But at that time, it was accounted that there were 43.5 million caregivers, and 34.2 million of those caregivers were caring for somebody over the age of 50. And 10% of caregivers are over 75, but the average age is about 49 years old. And then this one I feel like isn't necessarily the most accurate. It says the average hours of care per week ranged from 24 up to 44. And I can guarantee for many of you, it's a lot more than that. Generally, caregivers are comprised of about 60% women and 40% men. But of millennials, it's about equal, half and half. And then 56% of caregivers work full-time. And our mantra here at the Caregiver Resource Center is caregiving includes caring for me. And with that, just a little bit of background about our agency. We'll move forward and we're going to talk about the first steps for new caregivers. And before we get into that, I just wanted to let everyone know that you are welcome to utilize the chat. We will be monitoring that. And if there's questions that come up or comments, or you want more information about something, please don't hesitate to use that. This is a less interactive class. We can't see you if you're here attending. And so we definitely enjoy getting to hear from you in the chat. So please feel free to utilize that. And if you need any assistance, you can always try to message me privately. And then we can, again, address any questions that you might have. And so with that, as you know, caregiving is extremely difficult and oftentimes you feel a little lost. And so that's why we wanted to have this class. And with that, I'll turn it over to Peter, who's going to go ahead and get us started.
Thank you, Rachel. So again, welcome everyone to our workshop. So hopefully we will learn something about some ways to begin as a new caregiver. And we begin by mentioning a quote from the former First Lady, Rosalind Carter, and she said, "There are four kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, those who currently are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." And we often use this quote to talk about caregiving issues, to talk to caregivers, because as we can all agree, this is quite obvious and true. And our role basically change through time, depending on aging, our medical conditions, and how we're doing. So our main objective for the class is to provide the education and the material so that you understand the first steps to take as a caregiver. And then sometimes we ask you this question: where do I start? What do I do? In fact, this is the most common question that when we encounter a new client with our center, they asking this question, or they, in other words, ask this question is, what is my roadmap like? What is my journey of caregiving like? I don't want this. I just begin caregiving. What do I do? I'm stuck. I'm lost right now. And as you can see, I mentioned the word roadmap. Some say journey, and it may start by, you fall into the caregiving role as your loved one slowly declines. And this is often, of course, not by choice, by plan. By no means. This is sometimes things just happen to your loved one, medical condition, an accident, a fall, something just happened, and then caregiving and then just start from there. Like I mentioned, can be suddenly start with an acute medical condition. And sometimes caregiving can be short-term or episodic or long-term, depending on the conditions that your loved one is having. Being a family caregiver's mother, when you are starting as a new caregiver, it is hard to know where to begin. And then maybe you realize that your loved one needs a lot of help. It is no longer as self-sufficient as they once were, or perhaps has been a sudden change in a loved one's health. And again, this is there's a lot to think about here. Your loved ones also going through things in their mind that now they are no longer be able to take care of themselves. And when we talk about take care of ourselves, we are talking about the most basic things: feeding, eating, bathing, go to the restroom, changing clothing, walking, or transfer ourselves from from our bed to our chair. Those simple basic needs now being compromised because of a medical condition like a stroke, like dementia, like Parkinson's. So your loved one is going through different things there. And as a caregiver, you also realize now you kind of in this role to help with this many simple tasks. Now it can become challenging, and then again you're wondering, how do you begin to do this? Beginning to understand how to identify the needs of your loved one. For example, what is your loved one actual diagnosis? For some cases, you don't know that diagnosis yet. Maybe it's still unclear. Maybe waiting for further testing from the hospital, from the doctor. But understanding the needs and the condition is important. And then the second thing, we want to encourage you to plan for your self-care and respite. Do you have something for yourself too? And this sometimes we will talk about a lot, because as caregiver, we don't think this is important. From our perspective, this is extremely important. You are as important as your loved one that you care for. And then, you want to identify local resources. We live in a country that has so much to offer, nonprofit agencies and government benefits that they are everywhere. It's about how, I guess the magical word is, how do I navigate the resource? How do I navigate a system so I can find the right things for my needs, for my situation? And then you find the available support to match what you and your loved one needs. But the thing is, the earlier you find the help, the support, the resource, the better. Oftentimes when we encounter clients, sometimes we have family caregivers that tell us that they've been taking care of their loved one for 5 years. Unfortunately, they don't know us yet. But once they know us, they realize this is late. Well, I reassure them it's never too late. Of course, they want to know maybe the resource maybe 5 years sooner. However, the more help that you can gather, the better. It's never really too late. It's just about really try to have the awareness and the effort to find the help and the resource to help yourself. And like I mentioned, we're going to talk about, finding a diagnosis for your loved one, talking about their wishes, including healthcare and finances. This can be an extremely uncomfortable topic for some families, depending on your cultures and different things. However, as it can be so difficult and uncomfortable, it is an important thing to consider and to talk about. And then getting all others involved, like other family members. Typically, we have spouses care for spouses, partner care for partners. Sometimes children care for their parents, older parents, and then rare cases would be grandkids sometimes care for their grandparents. We even more rare, we have friends care for friends, close friends or siblings. Regardless, you want to involve as much as possible in terms of who can help, who can do certain things to help your situation. And then lastly will be like we talk about is community resources. There's so much out there. It's about finding the resource that match what you need. And again, most importantly, please don't forget you. Please take care of yourself. And then so Rachel gonna start with the number one focus is understanding your loved one medical condition by talking about the diagnosis, starting with a diagnosis.
Thank you, Peter. And we feel like this was a good place to start. When you're starting to caregive, maybe you've noticed changes in your loved one and you're not really sure what's going on. And taking time to get a good diagnosis can help you understand where your loved one is at now, as well as where they can be as time passes. This can help you prepare for your role as a caregiver and allow you to learn as much as you can about their disease. And the reason that it's important to learn about what the diagnosis is that helps so that you can anticipate what's coming as their condition changes. So instead of feeling worried or uncertain about the future, you can prepare for it. You can take the time to ask questions, prepare your home, and find resources to help if and when the workload expands. And so with starting with a diagnosis, this will help you really start to establish a new normal for yourself and for your family. And so we said this was a place to start, get a diagnosis. And so if your loved one does not have a diagnosis, it can even be confusing. Well, how do you get one established? So if you've noticed changes that require more support, it might be time to intervene and support your loved one's care. And the best place to start in doing that is with a medical professional. Sometimes that's a specialist, somebody like a neurologist or visiting a diagnostic clinic that can help provide a diagnosis and a clear care plan. This will help so that you feel like you're armed with knowledge, that you have a strong foundation from which to educate yourself and to develop a more realistic plan for your loved one's care as their diagnosis or their disease progresses. Also, oftentimes early diagnosis of a cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's disease can allow you to begin treatment earlier as well. And it's shown for most diseases that early treatment is more effective and can help delay the progression of the disease. So the more time you research and prepare for that progression of a disease, the more resourced you will be as a caregiver for your loved one. So start by calling your loved one's medical provider, talk to them about what your concerns are. And again, if you feel like you need a more specialized medical appointment, you can ask for that. Just ask for a referral to a neurologist or other specialist. And something that oftentimes comes up with your doctor's appointments for your loved one, they might start asking questions about ADLs is what they're called. And that means activities of daily living. Peter kind of mentioned this earlier. Some of the common areas that your doctor or your family doctor might start asking about are these items, things like ambulation or walking, transferring, so getting from a chair to standing or getting from the bed to standing, general mobility or how much help they might need with toileting or bathing, as well as dressing and grooming. And then another area that the doctor may ask about is what's called instrumental ADLs, or sometimes referred to as IADLs. And those are things that are a bit more complex in nature, things like communication or transportation, shopping, cooking, house cleaning, managing finances or managing medications, and even just enjoying leisure activities. And you'll often notice your loved one starts to decline in these areas first. Those more basic functions of daily living, bathing, walking, those are often impacted secondarily, and you'll start to notice issues with these instrumental ADLs first. And again, these are all just different areas to note so that you feel prepared when you go and you talk with a medical provider, that you have the information they're asking for, you're more familiar with this terminology, because I'm sure many of you have gone to the doctor before, and sometimes you almost feel like you need translation for what they're saying because it's very complicated and it can be difficult to understand and navigate. So we just wanted you to be a little bit more familiar with some of these common terms. And so again, the first step in understanding how to care for your loved one is really starting with a diagnosis. That can just help guide you on next steps, where to go, what treatment's available, and it can help you access other services that without it you might not know about. The second area that we wanted to discuss with you, as Peter mentioned when he outlined the class, was healthcare wishes and finances. So Peter's going to take over and he's going to go ahead and talk to us about this subject.
Yes, and in fact, this topic, before I work here, I don't do it for myself either. And if you read the document, any adult 18 years and older are allowed to complete such document already to basically identify what do you want as your healthcare wishes in the event that you are unable to make healthcare decision. A typical example is a coma, and we don't know the progressing or the prognosis of if the person can be recover or not, and we're talking about what is the wishes of the person at that time, and then discussion stuff like that can be scary. Like I said, it can be uncomfortable depending on culture. Some culture, other adults may thinking, oh, does my kids have some other means of plan? Why do they asking me to do this kind of wishes kind of thinking? Although it's just a planning thing. But and like I say, it can be uncomfortable, and you may have to do multiple attempts, multiple tries to engage your loved one or even yourself in this kind of discussion, to have it ready, to have a plan. I mentioned the difficult part of some families, but of course there are families who also really open mind, really okay with this as well. They have no question. They just really just thinking positive. This is about planning. It's nothing to think about. This is what I want if I am in this situation. And then we talk about advanced healthcare directive is the normal form to do healthcare wishes, or sometimes called a power of attorney for healthcare. They all serve similar purpose, just different forms call different things. Finances, estate planning is the form to do power attorney for finances, and then through doing this, you develop what kind of plan of care, because you understand what they need and what they want in terms of what in their wishes. But the focus on that is communication is key. Is open communication, within families, with your loved one, with yourself. And then on the slide you see here the advanced healthcare directive. This is the free form. You can either Google yourself, or we can share it with you easily. This is free completely. And then in the form you choose someone that you can trust or you can rely on to make medical decision making for you when you're unable to make the decision. And then you sign the form by the way to make it effective is either you sign with 2 witnesses that not relate to you, sign with you, or you can take this form to Notary Public and have that signed with a Notary Public in place. I think most people, I prefer this option because somehow with the stamp, healthcare providers, hospital, and other entities recognizes better than 2 witnesses. It's just an option. It's not like you have to do Notary Public, because I know it's cost money. But again, technically 2 ways to do this: Notary Public, or 2 witnesses that are not related to you to sign with you when you sign the form. I'm going further into the advanced healthcare directive. Indicate preferences about treatment, care, and end-of-life wishes. I forgot to mention another form here. It's called a 5 wishes. That form again serves a similar purpose. It's about healthcare planning, end-of-life planning, but that form go into much detail in terms of like What do you want for end of life? What do you want for, let's say after you even pass away? Do you want to cremate? You want to bury? Like different details like that. Go even into further, and then break it down to what called 5 wishes. That form is not free. It's a $5, I think, fee to pay for that. I don't think it's go up, but last time I checked, it's $5. Family members and healthcare providers should have copies of our current directives, including who is the agent to make the decision. Is there a living will in place? Again, when you do this thing, you make copy, you keep the original, you make a copy for your doctor, and then you give a copy to your agent. And make sure, of course, you let your agent know that you're choosing them to be the person to make that decision. Again, I know sometimes this discussion can bring so much anxiety, and even the agent themselves don't want to be the agent. But like we talk about life, so much unexpected accidents, injuries, and things are just happening that we can't control. Having this in place, in our opinion, and in most healthcare providers' opinions, is relieving anxiety, so we can prepare for the future, and then having those kind of, I think, honest and genuine discussion about what each person wants. To me, we want to honor the person's wishes, because at the end of life, if we can't even do that, to me, that's something that we maybe regret. But if we can honor their wishes by knowing what they want, it is something that we can do for someone at the end of life. As much as we talk about healthcare, the other issue is financial and property. The discussion about money is not easy. We all know that. It can be, again, as much you think healthcare decision is uncomfortable, talking about money and property is extremely uncomfortable. Because again, somehow that just brings up so many different things, perhaps depending on the family dynamics and different relationships, it comes up with different feelings, different thought process. However, it is something that also need to be talked about as well, and planning as well. Especially when somebody is encountering diagnosis like Alzheimer's disease, dementia. They may begin with the mild stage. They may still know what can they do about their checkbook and pay bills. But when they get to some point that they're unable to do it anymore, the question is, who will be in charge now to pay all the bills, to take care of all the financial responsibilities and decision? We have here so many cases that the care receiver, they were once the primary person who does all the financial stuff. Now the caregiver is the person who has to do that, and they have no idea how to do it, because it was never talked about. It was never discussed. In the event so and so sick or have something happen, then what will be the plan? So all of a sudden the caregiver is in that role of doing and learning from scratch of how to deal with all this stuff, because prior there are no discussion about it. Like I say, illnesses, things happen. We don't plan those stuff. It's just out of nowhere. As much as we try to plan, hopefully it will be the way to ease anxiety and at least to kind of somewhat problem solve the issue when you have to deal with that unexpectedly. When it comes to financial planning, the two common things that you may see on the screen here is the will, and then the living trust. In my opinion, we're not lawyers, to be clear, we just share what we know. Will, it names the executor and the beneficiaries, and it takes effect when a person dies. Living trust names a trustee, provides instruction about how to manage a person's estate. It can include a broad range of property, helps avoid probate, specifies whether a trust will end when the last beneficiary dies or continue to benefit others. My understanding is living trust is a legal document. The will may not be legal technically and may be a part of living trust. Again, I'm sharing what I know as my knowledge. I'm not a lawyer, nor Rachel is. So if you want to talk more about this, please talk to the elder laws attorney for the actual legal advice on this such documents. But this is the two common thing in terms of documents that you will hear when it comes to financial planning. Evaluate finances and costs. What will be used to cover the expenses for your loved one with the needs? And then you look at healthcare insurance benefits as well. What does Medicare really pay for? Is there what is home health services? What is hospice care? what does in-home care, assisted living, nursing skills cost? I think when you read the slide, it's kind of sum up the idea that when caregiving start, financial stress is a big deal. And I think I heard this from somebody. If you are rich, you have so much money, then this is nothing to worry about. Obviously, you can pay for someone to care for your loved one 24/7, and perhaps you don't even have to do caregiving. The actual like caregiving work, you might just be available for emotional support for your loved one, and then hiring agencies, caregivers to do the work for you, right? If we have so much money, then we have nothing to deal with. Unfortunately, we're not all in that situation. Oftentimes, we struggle with money, financial expenses, especially when it comes to caregiving. So this you want to explore, as much as possible in terms of like benefit through Medicare, and then even Medi-Cal. We don't mention Medi-Cal yet, but Medi-Cal is kind of like the only government benefit through the state that is available to help you, kind of indirect financial help assistance right now available if you qualify for Medi-Cal or your loved one qualify for Medi-Cal. But other than that, most of the time everything is going to be out of pocket, your own money. So then you want to kind of do the math, the evaluation of your financial situation to see what has to be done to cover all this costs and care and different things. And then all this questions are going to come up. When will be the right time for hospice care? When should I do home health services? We don't mention something here, but again, even question like palliative care. When should you do that? And where should you even place your loved one to a skilled nursing facility or an assisted living facility or boarding care? Those are all hard questions that there are no easy answer to answer at when you think of it. Rachel now will discuss about how do we involve other family members or friends.
Great, thank you, Peter. And I like how Peter's talking about if you just have so much money, you don't even have to worry about it. That sounds really nice. So I should probably start playing the lottery a little bit more because you got to play to win. But most of us just aren't in that boat. And so we really want to be able to communicate with you guys about all these different resources and things that are available. So far, we've talked about the importance of getting a diagnosis. We've talked about healthcare wishes and finances. And we're going to move forward with, as Peter mentioned, getting others involved. Again, this is kind of an overview, so I know some of this might feel a little overwhelming. If you have more questions, again, feel free to utilize the chat. You'll have our contact information at the end as well. We are available. We always have social workers on the phones to take calls and provide support and resources. So this is an overview. It is a lot of information. And be gentle with yourself and kind with yourself as we go through these materials. So again, with getting others involved, caregiving can be extremely overwhelming. It can be very isolating, and it can be really easy to kind of get lost in caregiving. And so it's really important for you to expand the circle of support for both you as the caregiver and then also for the person that you're caring for. And it's, it can be a little bit difficult to start this process. What does that look like, getting others involved? How do I reach out? And one of the first things that when you notice a decline in your loved one, or you do receive a diagnosis of a chronic illness, would be to hold a family meeting. Consider inviting your family and close friends to come together to discuss your loved one's care. If possible, and if it's appropriate, depending on your loved one's needs, they can also be included in the meeting. Things that you can do, list tasks that are needed so that they can be easily divided up, let others discuss their concerns. And also, as questions arise, be open to answering those. There's more information that we could provide through our statewide program. There's a fact sheet that we have. It's called Holding a Family Meeting. And so that's something that we can definitely also provide to you. And so with a family meeting, what are some of the things that you can discuss during this meeting? A good place to start can be even just talking about the latest report from the medical doctor, from the physician or the specialist, talking about the diagnosis, what kind of updates were provided, Have medications been changed? And what are next steps in the treatment plan? So that's always a good place to start. And then also another area to talk about would be to share your feelings related to the caregiving situation or your loved one's illness. A lot of times, caregiving brings up a lot of emotions for everybody involved. It brings up emotions for the caregiver. It brings up emotions for the care receiver as well, if they realize that they're having this change in their health. So it's okay to talk about fears about death and dying, fears about being overwhelmed, or fears about what happened to family members after the death of your loved one. Other emotions that come up often are feelings of sadness, a lot of confusion. It's very normal to feel anger, and definitely caregiving and guilt seem to go hand in hand. And that's part of what we're here to talk about today, is finding ways that you can feel less guilty, with all that you're doing. And then also, what is the person that you're caring for? What do they want? What do they need for their situation? What is it that they want out of this? And another thing to talk about is even just daily caregiving needs. So there's so much, this is probably not going to all be talked about in one family meeting. These are just different topics for different meetings that you can have with your loved ones. And for example, when it comes to daily caregiving needs, that's things like, should the person who needs care be moving in with us, or who can they move in with? Does the care receiver need to move into an assisted living facility, or a memory care, or even skilled nursing? Like Peter mentioned, these are big decisions that aren't easy to make. And they're very complicated, and there's really generally not really a wrong or right choice. It's what's right for you and your family and your loved one. And even things like, how much time does each family member have to visit the person who's ill or has the chronic disease? And then also other ways that each person can help. What other types of help might be available? Another issue to talk about, which is what Peter was alluding to, is these financial concerns when it comes to caregiving. Earlier today, actually, our staff here did a training, and it said that 78% of caregivers do have a financial burden and out-of-pocket cost associated with being a caregiver. So some of the questions that might come up: how much is this going to cost? How much work can certain family members afford to miss? Who has a job that's more flexible, or especially now, as we're coming out of this pandemic, is who maybe works remote or has flexibility within their role at work and can provide additional support. What financial help might be available from the outside? As Peter mentioned, Medi-Cal or these other government funded programs might be available. And then also, like Peter was talking about, when it comes to those healthcare wishes, is who's going to be the decision maker? Who's going to manage finances? Who's going to help with medical decisions or hiring of caregivers? And then also, how will those decisions be made? Will it be a collaborative process? Will your family make a vote? Will it be a pros and cons list? What does it look like to actually make those decisions? And then what support role does each person want to play? We all have strengths and areas that we want to improve on. And so all of our skills can be utilized in different ways to provide support to both the caregiver and then also to the person who's being cared for. And that's part of this, is what sort of support does the primary caregiver need? And during a family meeting, this can be something that often is forgotten about. But when you are the primary person, if you are the go-to, you're the one who's really managing all of this, what are your needs? Is there a need for respite, which is a break from caregiving? Is it getting help with meals or shopping or laundry, or even emotional support? Is it checking in by phone? Is it sending emails, or is it helping with chores, taking your loved one to a doctor's appointment or scheduling doctor's appointments? What are going to be the things that help you the most? And I wanted to talk about tips on how to ask for help, because it can be really challenging. It can be very difficult for us to ask for help. For whatever reason, we as people tend to shy away. We almost view asking for help as some sort of weakness, or, that we're not capable. And it's so far from the truth. It's a way to get other people involved in your loved one's situation and really expand that circle of support I mentioned. So things to ask about, as I was mentioning, talk about somebody's special abilities or interests. For instance, if somebody really likes cooking and they absolutely hate driving, you're probably going to be more successful in asking for help if you ask for help with meal preparation rather than taking your loved one to appointments. And then also try not to ask the same person repeatedly. Sometimes the people that we care about and we ask for help sometimes have a hard time saying no. So if it's possible, kind of rotate through who you're asking for help. And then also pick the right time to make a request. Timing is really important. If somebody's very tired or they're stressed, they might not be able to help at that time. And then also, it's always good. You'll oftentimes hear we talk about the help list, or having a list available. So think of things that you're going to need help with: laundry, cooking, driving, all these different things. And then, even yard work. And then let the person who's helping you choose from that list of what it is that they'd like to do. And then also, this is the hard part, is to be prepared for hesitance or even refusal from the person. And it can be really upsetting when you're caring for somebody and you finally reach out for that help and they say no. But I would encourage you, and I think Peter would encourage you, to still reach out, to continue to ask. There's going to be situations where people just aren't able, they don't have the capacity, but it would be better for you to continue to seek support than to become more isolated. And so the person who may have refused today, next week might have the ability to help you. And so, again, we really encourage you to continue to reach out to others. And sometimes it's being really specific, using I statements as well. Things like, an example would be, I would like to go to church on Sunday. Would you mind staying with my grandmother from 9 a.m. to noon? So it really kind of gives somebody, when you just say, hey, can you help me? It might not be specific enough. They might not know where to turn, how to help. So that would be, an option, is really trying to be specific. Another thing to talk about during a family meeting or over the course of multiple family meetings would be, how will the caregiving and support needs change as the illness progresses? Again, kind of working on that problem solving, making lists of tasks that need to be done that can be referred back to. And then also, provide summaries of the meetings. And even that can be something, who's going to, here in the office, we always say, who's going to be taking minutes. And so having somebody take minutes and distribute that to the other members of the family meeting, and then schedule another one. Have this be a part of your regular caregiving situation, is keeping that support circle involved. And again, it's going to be, I would say, extremely difficult, but honestly, it would be impossible to cover all of these in one meeting. It'd be the longest meeting of all time. So having more meetings will be very helpful. It's good to have a timetable, a beginning and an end, because sometimes, we can start talking and, there's differences of opinions or more ideas come up, and it's good to kind of set limits so that everybody continues to want to be involved in this. And then also, here are some questions for you to consider as you go through this, because again, it can be very overwhelming. It can be really easy to take on more and more tasks. And so ask yourself, what are you doing that others might be able to help you with? Also, what are some of the things that you might have given up because you've had too much to do? Maybe some of those things that you love or that you just haven't been able to do anymore. And then also, this can be a tough one, is what are you doing that you don't need to do? And we start to get control by giving it up. I think that's so interesting, because I think we all kind of strive to have some control over our situations. And when you're caring for another person, there's so little that we have a say in. We can't stop their illness. We can't change that they got this diagnosis, or oftentimes that we're caregivers. And so by reaching out, getting others involved can really help so that it's more manageable for you as the primary caregiver. With that, we wanted to talk about, in the realm of getting others involved is also reaching out to community resources, seeing what's out there, what's available. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Peter and he'll discuss this further.
Thank you, Rachel. Before I go into this in detail, I want to say thank you to Patrick and Veronica for asking your question in the chat. Patrick, like I shared in the chat, we are recording this and it will be available for the public after we kind of finalize the video and all that. So it will be available for the public to view later on. Veronica asked a good question about her parents recently living in a senior community. And what will be the resource in Santa Ana, for example. So I share about you can check more on Office on Aging. And I just thought of, almost every city has a senior center. Now, if it's just a general inquiry on resources, you can visit the senior center of the city and then asking them what is available in your city in terms of nonprofit agency for older adults, what is available, so on. So it's basically like a starting point to look around for those information at the senior center. And I think I always like to advertise 211. It seems to be the number to call when we stuck. I don't know. We don't know everything. We don't have all the answer. But it's similar. 211 may know something, may know some agency's name or number that can give it to you. The more like we talk about specific needs for when we're asking for help from family members. It's the same concept when you look for resources as well. Resource is a nice word, but it can be so general. What are we looking for? So you want to kind of narrow it down, understanding what you're looking for. It can be very helpful. But like I say, a starting point can be visit a senior center. Just I'm sure they have brochure stuff everywhere. You can just look at it, like explore the resource, and then get information there. So again, thank you for your question. So we're going to the detail of the community resources. We briefly talk about government programs like Medi-Cal and Medicare. And we can spend like 2 hours continue talking about just Medi-Cal alone. We're not gonna do that today because Medi-Cal has so much to offer in terms of again, we call it indirect financial benefit. It is as a godsend to some families that they have Medi-Cal because it helps out so much. SSI, again, if you are in the realm of like low income, below the federal poverty guideline, you or your loved one may qualify for SSI. In-home support services is another help out there, a government support service. This one is basically the government approved caregiving hours for your loved one. And then you can be the caregiver that get paid, or you can hire a caregiver who already registered with in-home supportive services to get paid through this program. It's another way to get you help, basically. Again, indirect financial help, right? Or you can, or some people, some family, they want to be the person who get paid to do the work for their loved one. That's okay too. So again, these are just some example of government benefits that can help in your caregiving journey. Free services. So I mentioned about senior center, and then of course you can visit your faith community, churches. I'm sure they know some places, some agencies that can also give you more information. Disease organizations. For example, if your loved one has Parkinson, you can Google Parkinson disease, and it will take you to maybe the national website. Again, more resource there. Hospital senior services and care management. Some hospitals do offer that, like a department just providing senior services. St. Jude has that department providing senior services. They actually call that. All the nonprofit agencies, and us, of course, we are a nonprofit agency, as we mentioned in the beginning, continue to provide free services to caregivers like yourself. So again, there's, like I mentioned in the beginning, we mentioned in the beginning, is so much out there. It's about trying to really have the time to go through all of it. And believe me, this can be overwhelming too. It sounds like so much help, but so much help can be overwhelming. Maybe if you kind of like don't know what to go, don't know the direction. So my suggestion is that kind of like, okay, what am I looking for here exactly? Like really have a plan, like organized plan. Then maybe you can kind of narrow where you need to go to look for this information. Or else it can be very overwhelming. And then sometimes we're running into issues like people don't follow up with resources after we share the resource because it's so much. and everything you have to do the calling and you have to follow up. So it can be challenging at times. So again, have a plan in place can be helpful to know your direction. I appreciate the feedback. I will try to talk slower so you can hear me more clear. Thank you. So additional resources, like we see on the screen here, Office on Aging, Council on Aging offers a lot of services. As well, senior services. I think their main focus is provide services in the South County area as well. Meals on Wheels services, APS, like I mentioned about 211. CalOptima is basically an agency that managing Medi-Cal if you already have Medi-Cal. And within CalOptima, they offer additional services for their members. Community Legal Aid, Aging and Disability Resource Connection, Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline, and that's the phone number. I believe all these resources are free. I don't think they are cost to any of these resources. Mental health resources. So Insight is a free counseling program through, this is their name. And then if you are a caregiver or if you are a care recipient who needing to have someone to talk to, like a counselor, they offer free counseling service. OC Warm Line, and then OC Links. OC Links is a phone number you can call to asking about behavioral health resources. Like you have some condition or your loved one may have mental health conditions that you don't know how to start to get services, then you can call OC Links. And then recently we have the new phone number for the crisis and the suicide hotline, 988. You can call this, then 911. This is why they set this up, so that people can be basically redirect to this phone number, then keep calling 911 for emergency. So if you or your loved one having crisis, mental health crisis, you can call 988. And then DD Hearst Mental Health Services is always available to address suicidal ideation issues, mental health issue, depression. And as we talk about resources, now we're going to go into, to me, the most important kind of discussion of the day is about you, caring for you. And Rachel will do this.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Peter. I saw that this was the next section and I said, ooh, it's the best part of the whole presentation. So this part is, I like to think of it as we're covering this as the best for last. And that's caring for you too. As we said, our mantra here is caregiving includes caring for me. You are such a critical piece of this caregiving equation. Without you, there is no one to care for your loved one. There's no one to coordinate all of this. And so you are such a high priority in getting yourself cared for and, as the saying is, refilling your own cup is just so critical when you're caregiving for somebody else. And that can be a lot easier said than done. So hopefully, as we talk today, you'll have some ideas of ways to increase your ability to engage in self-care and have time for yourself and respite. Because like we've mentioned throughout this, caregiving is extremely difficult. It really does try you emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and it can really impact your health. In terms of your emotion, it's very common for caregivers to experience anxiety and depression. 20 to 50% of caregivers report feeling depressed. This is a lot of high stress. And then also this impacts you physically. Oftentimes as the care receiver's health deteriorates, so does the caregivers. And this combination of loss, of prolonged stress, and the physical demands of caregiving, they really do increase your risk for significant health problems overall. Also, older caregivers are not the only ones who put their health and well-being at risk. If you are younger and you've assumed a caregiver role for your parents, a sibling, a loved one, while also trying to work or raise children, you also face an increased risk for depression or chronic illness. And generally, you can experience a decline in the quality of life. This includes being sleep deprived. I can't see all of you, but I'm sure if I could, and I said, raise your hand if you wish you could get a little more sleep. I think we'd all have our hands up. Poor eating habits, failure to exercise, failure to rest when you're not feeling well, postponing your own medical appointments or treatment that you might need, feeling isolated, experiencing financial stress. Caregiving can really be quite the emotional roller coaster. And on one hand, caring for your family member demonstrates a very beautiful and sacrificial love and commitment, and can be really, really rewarding. And on the other hand, exhaustion, worry, inadequate resources, and continuous care demands are extremely stressful. And so that's why we really want to talk about ways that you can take care of yourself. And so with that, again, caregiving includes caring for you. And oftentimes as caregivers, you feel selfish or that you're not allowed to take time for yourself. That's where that word guilt comes in a lot. And the thing is, when you care for yourself, it makes you a much better caregiver. The person that you're caring for will benefit from you taking time for yourself so that you can feel recharged, so that you can really engage with this person, and so that you can find more joy and kind of thrive as a caregiver, not just survive. And then remember, support and help is available. You do have to reach out for it though, oftentimes, because again, it can be so isolating, but we are here. Like Peter mentioned, 211, there's an Alzheimer's 24-hour hotline. There's just so much that's out there. It's just getting connected to it. And sometimes what holds us back is not taking the time to kind of identify our own personal barriers. So many times our attitudes and beliefs form personal barriers that can stand in the way of caring for ourselves. That might be a lifelong pattern, with taking care of yourself as the lowest priority and taking care of others as an easier option. But as a family caregiver, you have to ask yourself, what good will I be to the person I care for if I become ill, if something happens to me, if I'm not well? And breaking old patterns and overcoming obstacles is not easy. It can be done, but it's not easy. And the first task in removing some of those barriers is to identify what's in your way. So for example, do you think you're being selfish if you put your needs first? Or is it kind of scary to think about what your own needs are? Do you have trouble asking for what you need? Or like I mentioned earlier, do you feel kind of inadequate if you need to reach out and ask for help? Do you feel like you have something to prove, or that you need to be able to win over your care receiver's affection? Because this is oftentimes a very thankless job. And then do you do too much as a result of trying to overcome or overcompensate for these items? And oftentimes caregivers just have misconceptions that their increase in stress gets in the way of good self-care. Some of the most commonly expressed misconceptions are things like, I'm responsible for my parents' health, or if I don't do it, no one will. Or even sometimes if I do it right, I'll get the love and attention and respect that I deserve. Or this one, especially with different cultures, our family always takes care of their own. Or this one, we talked about, we'll call it the G word, guilt. And then we also have this P word, promise, right? I promised my father I would always take care of mom. We base our behavior on our thoughts, our beliefs, our attitudes, and those misconceptions I just shared with you can cause caregivers to continually attempt to do what cannot be done and to control what cannot be controlled. That results in feelings of continued failure, frustration, and really causes us to ignore our own needs. So again, ask yourself, what is it that might be getting in the way or keeping me from taking care of myself? And also, it's so important to stay or get connected. So who is supporting you? You are supporting your loved one. You are doing so much to make sure they're well cared for, that they have all the things they need, that they get their favorite meals. all these things, but who is supporting you? So check in, make sure that you're connecting with your friends, with other family. And this is a really big one that we can't emphasize enough, is joining a support group with other caregivers like yourself. It is such an amazing experience because oftentimes caregivers, you feel like nobody gets it until they're in it. People don't really understand what this entails when you're caregiving. And so please reach out, join a support group. We offer support groups, Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Orange County. There's a lot available. And all you have to do is contact us or 211 and we'll all get you connected. Something that I wanted to talk about too is just this idea that self-compassion is absolutely essential to self-care. Be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. None of us have all the answers. None of us have a crystal ball, and none of us are perfect. We're all doing the best that we can, and it's okay to give yourself some grace. Some of the things that you can do to help yourself are to accept help. Like we talked about, have a list, and then when somebody offers to help you, say yes. Sometimes the things that they offer aren't exactly what you're hoping for. Say yes anyway. Whatever it is that they can help you with and get some of these things off your plate, try it, see how it goes. And then also focus on what you are able to provide. Again, it's normal to feel guilty, but try to understand nobody's a perfect caregiver. We're human. Remember, you're doing the best that you can and making the best decisions that you can at any given time. Also, set realistic goals, break big tasks down into smaller ones, take steps so that you can do things one at a time. Prioritize, make lists, try to establish a daily routine. And if you need to, this is also a difficult word for caregivers, and most of us, is no. Say no if you can't. If you normally host the holidays, no, I'm not able to. Or if you normally, offer to babysit the grandkids, no, I'm not able to. And that's okay. It's okay for you to say no. Again, get connected. Find out about caregiving resources in your community. There are caregiver resource centers throughout the entire state, like we talked about. And there are things out there like transportation, meal delivery, housekeeping, these different things that might be available to you. And again, join a support group, seek social support, see your doctor, get respite, whatever that looks like. And again, when you have questions or you need more information about these things, let us know. We're here to help. And with that, we really can't emphasize enough that taking time for yourself is not being selfish. It's a necessity. It's absolutely needed. As you can see here on the screen, and if you're a client with us, you will see this 50 ways to take a break many, many times. We send it out. We have it all over the place. We're happy to send it to you again so that you can post this in every room of the house. Because sometimes when you actually do get a little bit of a break, you're not even sure what to do, and so this can be some very achievable ways to take care of yourself. Caregiver burnout is extremely common. And so it's important to recognize the early signs of that. These things might be irritability or problems with sleeping. Sometimes it's even forgetfulness. And know your own warning signs. We all have different warning signs, and then try to figure out ways that you can make changes. Try not to wait until you're too overwhelmed. And again, also identify sources of stress. Ask yourself, what is it that's causing stress for me? It might be that you have too much to do. It might be family disagreements or family dynamics, feeling of inadequacy, or struggling to say no. And then again, identify what you can and cannot change. Try to remember that the only thing we really have control over and that we can change is ourselves. We cannot change anybody else, not our loved one, not our support system. And when you try to change things that you have no control over, we just get more frustrated. You can ask yourself, what is it that I do have control over? What can I change? And even sometimes making small changes for ourselves can make a really big difference. Like I mentioned, even just saying no sometimes, or even sometimes it's saying yes. Oh, my friend asked me to go to dinner. Normally I'd say no, I'm too tired. And sometimes it's saying yes. Some ideas, again, you can see on the 50 ways to take a break, but even, taking a 15-minute walk, doing crochet, yoga, breathing exercises, taking a quick nap, or calling an old friend, reading your favorite book. These are some of the things that can really be helpful for you as a caregiver in terms of taking care of yourself. And then we wanted to finish up with sharing 10 tips for family caregivers. And if you take anything from today, these are some of the things that we really want you to remember. Number one is to seek support from other caregivers. You are not alone. Caregiving can be extremely isolating. We've said it a couple times, but know that there are other people in this situation with you, and it's important that you get connected. Number two, take care of your health so that you can be strong enough to take care of your loved one. You have to take care of you so that you can be a caregiver, so that you can give your loved one what it is that they need. And three, accept offers of help and suggest specific things people can do to help you. So again, say yes. If you get offered help, say yes as often as you can. Make your list of things to do, be specific when you ask, and that can really help you get that help that you're looking for. And four is learn how to effectively communicate with doctors. That's kind of what we talked about with those ADLs and those IADLs, is kind of understanding some of this lingo that doctors use. I mean, it's already hard enough to read their writing. And then some of the things that they say, it makes it that much harder. So it's good to kind of have that information so that you feel more prepared. You feel like you're able to communicate with them. And then five, caregiving is hard work. So take respite breaks often. Even if that's taking an extra minute in the bathroom, where that's the only time maybe you ever get to be alone, especially if you have kids. So take breaks when you can. We can't all go on 4-week vacations to Europe every couple months. So you got to do what you can do and make those moments count. And then 6, watch out for signs of depression and don't delay in getting professional help when you need it. Like we talked about, that's why we shared those mental health resources, because it is very common for caregivers to experience depression and anxiety. So reach out, get the help that you need when you need it. And then 7 is be open to new technologies that can help you care for your loved one. There are things that are coming out all the time: fall prevention, wandering prevention, medication management, these different things that can really be helpful and reduce some of the stress and work that you're doing for your loved one. And then 8, organize medical information so it's up to date and easy to find. Some of those documents that Peter discussed earlier in the class, have those readily available in places where you can find them and your family knows where they are. And along that same page is making sure your legal documents are in order and available, ready to be shared or used when needed. And then number 10, again, probably Peter and my favorite, is to give yourself credit for doing the best job that you can in one of the most difficult jobs there is. I have never heard of a job that is unpaid, is actually 24 hours a day, no PTO, no sick time. This is hard work that you're doing, and you're doing the best that you can. So please give yourself credit, give yourself grace, and take care of you. And with that, that's the end of our presentation today, the end of our class. We did want to open it up if there's any questions or anything that you would like more information on. And it's been noted to me that the questions that you type in the chat, only Peter and myself are able to see. So while you guys are taking the time to think about if there's anything that you would like to ask or you want us to touch on, please feel free to start typing that information. And in the meantime, I just want to share what some of the questions that have been asked so far. One of the participants in the class today was looking for resources in the city of Santa Ana and not really knowing where to find all those resources, where to start, who to reach out to. And so Peter provided information on reaching out to 211 and then also calling us here at the Caregiver Resource Center. And then there were a couple questions about getting copies of this presentation today. And again, this is being recorded. And so we will be sending this out. We will be posting this on our website and YouTube so that it's accessible, or, if you wanted to send it to any other caregivers that you might know. And then a couple people asked for the 50 ways to take a break, and we are very happy to send that out. We have digital copies, we have hard copies, and so we're happy to do that as well. Peter, I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to share. We can give it a couple minutes to see if anybody has questions, and then otherwise we can wrap up.
Thank you, Rachel. I think we can show the audience the contact phone number. You know, I think most of these questions we call it is probably easier to talk to a live person than you know, a chat that we can only provide so much information on the chat. So here's our contact. If you want, you can take maybe a phone and take a quick picture of it before you receive a copy of the slides. You can just take a picture of the slides and then have our contact there. Our website has been upgraded, and there's so much information on the website alone already. If you have time to kind of navigate through our website, and you know, as I'm thinking about what we share with you, there's so much information here, and we call this first steps for new caregiver. And I thought to myself, if any caregiver can somehow do all the steps, I mean, then they are master of caregiving. I mean, we don't need to be supporting you anymore. But we understand that within the step, there are barriers that preventing us from doing whatever, you know, would be, I guess, logically or maybe makes sense. There are so many barriers that either directly or indirectly impacting maybe your goal or how you want to approach your caregiving situation. And it's no right or wrong, though. It's just how life is, I think. And that's why we're here to do that kind of consultation support for you regarding especially just caregiving. If you are in the, I think we mentioned briefly, we are a part of a statewide caregiver resource center system, meaning if you live in OC, Orange County, you can call us directly on the slide there. If you live in LA, Riverside, or any county in this state, there is a resource center that is available that we can refer you to that center for you to have your own consultation with that particular center that know your area the best. So meaning, in summary, there are services available for family caregivers across the state, okay? Again, we serving Orange County resident only. So contact us if you have specific questions about what you learned today or anything else that you want to ask us. I guess in summary, we just want to say we're here for you. So again, strong emphasis on take care of yourself, take respite, and then love yourself. Please do that as much as you love your loved one. That's my last thought, Rachel. If you have anything else you want to share.
I just wanted to share that while this class is titled First Steps for New Caregivers, caregiving changes all the time. You know, our own personal situations change, our loved ones' health declines, or especially if you're dealing with cognitive impairments, I mean, behaviors change, things change all the time. And so there's always information that can be helpful. And it's always good to have these reminders of things that are important or things to follow up with that maybe you've been a caregiver for quite some time and, you know, oh yeah, I should get my legal documents in order, my financial situation in order. And so there's always more to learn. And then also in the chat, somebody was asking about support groups. And so again, call us at the number listed on the screen. We do have our own support groups in-house. Most of them are done virtually on Zoom, and you do not have to live in Orange County in order to be a part of those services or to join in any classes. And I would also encourage you to check out our website and look at the other courses that we'll be offering and webinars that we'll be hosting, because some of those might be very helpful to you in your caregiving situation. But other than that, I think that's about it. If you have additional questions, please feel free to give us a call, go on our website, and we're happy to help. Like Peter said, we're here to support you. We're here to walk alongside you on your caregiving journey. And if anything from this class, please take care of yourself. You are extremely important. And with that, that's about it. So we'll go ahead and say goodbye, and we hope to see you all soon. And we'll be sending out the materials that we discussed during the class. And thank you for coming today.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.